a startup is a temporary organization to get to product market fit. And then after you do that, then you change your organization to start scaling something that's working. But in the meantime, you're basically just, you're like a laboratory.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Leads to Growth. I'm your host, Chris McCoy with the National Association of Sales Professionals, and I've got another amazing guest. Go figure, y'all. I keep attracting amazing guests. Game recognized game over here. I've got someone named Drew Sechrist on the line with us here. Welcome to the call, Drew. Thanks for joining us.
Chris, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So Drew is the co-founder and CEO of Connect the Dots, who I just went through my demo with this week, which is it is a brand new player in the system, which I never heard before. And it's their powerful network intelligence player, really helping you leverage and getting finding the strongest connections in your network and your community's network, your business's network. And they're really doing some awesome things in the game. And I'm going to come back to that, Drew. But first, I want to start off with, man, you've got a great story, y'all. Drew's got an awesome story. We're going to kind of let the bio roll out a little bit here because Drew's got some real cool background. Drew, now tell us first off, where did you start off? I heard this rumor about you starting off at Salesforce, man. Some number 36 employee. How did this happen? How did you get started with Salesforce?
Yeah. Well, the rumors are true. I was employee number 36 at Salesforce.
36.
Yeah, we were all in one room together. It was pretty cool. Particularly now that it's a $250 billion company and it's all over the planet and they've got skyscrapers. It's hard to believe.
For all y'all who don't know, Drew was there while they went from 0 to $1 billion. And not only was the highest performing salesperson, he was the highest performing sales manager. But it didn't start there, Drew. How did it start, man? That's the best part.
Did not start there. So I grew up on the East Coast in Pennsylvania, and I went to school in North Carolina, and Tar Heel. Graduated from the University of North Carolina.
Got to clarify that, yeah.
Yep, there are a couple other schools down there, but I went to the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. Nice. And when I graduated, I had a girlfriend in college who was a couple years behind me, so I wanted to stay in Chapel Hill, and I stuck around and found a company to work with that was in the CRM space. And this is back in the late 90s. And so I was reselling. I was at a VAR that resold CRM software. And I cold emailed Mark Benioff when I saw that he had gotten into a Wall Street Journal article back in 1999 about him leaving Oracle to start this new idea called Salesforce.com. And they were going to rewrite CRM software from the ground up to run on the internet like Yahoo or Amazon. Those are the examples that he was using. And my mind blew. I just was like, this is exactly what needs to happen, because I was implementing the CRM software of the day, and it was bad. There were a lot of problems with the on-premise model. So I cold emailed Mark and said, hey, Mark, could we resell your product? That's what my company did at the time. And he said, we're not going to have a reseller network. We're going to have a direct sales team. And then I said, well, maybe we should talk about something else then. And he said, fly out to San Francisco, let's talk. Nice. So literally I flew out to San Francisco and met with Mark, told him, he said, what do you want to do for us? The presumptive, I think you want to work here. And I said, Mark, I can do anything except code for you. What do you want me to do? And he said, why don't you go sell? And I said, okay. And then he literally, Chris, he quadrupled my salary, but what I was making in North Carolina at that point, he's like, okay, here's your comp plan. It's about 4X. And so I quit immediately, packed up in North Carolina, drove cross country, moved to San Francisco. And then I spent the next 10 years of my life working with Mark and the rest of the Salesforce team.
I don't think I have to ask, unfortunately, what happened to the girlfriend. I don't.
It didn't work.
Like
it didn't work out
on this. It worked out for everybody. This is part of the journey. Yeah.
She's gone on to do other amazing things.
I'm sure she has. And I'm sure it worked out beautiful for everybody. So first off, I love this little push pin in here. So dude had a job. He had a problem. He wanted to stay in Chapel Hill. So he found a gig, right? Found a gig's doing something that he enjoyed, that he was passionate about. And then what happened? He found a problem, a challenge. The product he's selling, the best product on the market, still aren't cutting it, right? And somebody else is offering a better solution. So what do? He went to solve his problem by reaching out, doing something that was probably not the most comfortable thing. Probably put you a little bit of uncertainty going through that process, right, Drew? My man, but you had to sell yourself. You had to sell yourself and you had to get out there and do it. I love it. All right, so you go, you're rocking with them. You start selling. You get to be in one of the most magical decades, watching, especially up in your career at that point, to watch this company blow up and to be a huge part of it. Then what happens?
Well, I mean, so after that 10 years at Salesforce, after the magic decade, there was never a good time to leave Salesforce. It was just a rocket ship. It still is today. It's a great company. For a company of that size, it's got a great culture. So, Mark has really done something, and the entire team over there have done something really magical. But I kind of knew in my bones that I was an entrepreneur, and I thought I would, work for Salesforce for 2 years and then make some money, make some contacts, and then start my own company. And but the problem was, lots of problems. .com bubble burst, and so it was a bad time to leave a paying job, particularly a job that was paying so well. And then I started making some money, and I was able to buy like a condo in San Francisco, and it you kind of get comfortable, and going to start a company is really risky, and I wasn't, I just got comfortable, so I stayed there for 10 years. But at the end of 10 years, I knew I needed to go scratch that entrepreneurial itch, or I would have regrets. And so I left, and I started a company called Kazoo. Which
before we move past the Kazoo, I definitely want to get to Kazoo, but tell me about when you left. Often I see people leave companies, and they feel like they're starting over from scratch. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And tell me about all the things that you brought with you from that 10-year experience onto that next gig.
Well, there's so much that I brought with me, but there's so much that I didn't bring with me, and that actually kind of led, later. I'll do a little foreshadowing here. Led to my new company, Connect the Dots. Yes. So what I brought with me was this amazing experience, a great resume, lots of people that I knew very well personally. We'd work closely together, both my coworkers and my customers and partners, and so I had those great personal relationships. I had a lot of knowledge. I really understood how we built SaaS from the ground up. The entire industry has adopted the best practices that came out of Salesforce, and those are things that I was very much involved in inventing from the ground up. So I kept all that stuff. What I didn't keep though was, and I use the phrase, it felt like a lobotomy when I left. The very first day I walked out of the door of Salesforce after being there for 10 years, and remember that was like 10 formative years. I think it was 26 until maybe like 36, something like that. Yeah,
those are some driving years right there.
Some driving years. And so I left, I remember walking out the door, and then I wanted to know some information that used to be at my fingertips. Mm-hmm. And now it was gone, because I had access to Salesforce's what we called Org 62. That is Salesforce's own implementation of Salesforce. And I was a dyed-in-the-wool Salesforce advocate, right? So I would record all of my activities, all my contacts, and all the companies I was working with, and tracked all of that stuff religiously in Salesforce. And then all of a sudden it was shut off, and I couldn't look at it. And then it was like a chunk of my brain was gone. I was like, I don't know all these people that I interacted with. The other thing that was gone too was my email account. I had a 10-year-old email account at Salesforce with all this communication history with people, and it was gone. And I kind of remember just like staggering around at the thought of like, what have I done? What have I done?
Yeah, you had built it up to such an asset, but it wasn't yours.
Yeah, exactly.
So I love the idea that we're planting the seed here. Relationships, knowledge, right? So we gain all this knowledge and experience. Now, first off, tell me, were you part of the original Dreamforce? Was that created while you were in-house there?
Oh yeah. I remember the very first Dreamforce we did. I don't know, it was, my guess is that was probably 2001. And remember, I came in 99.
So just right at the beginning.
Yeah. I mean, we were a pre-revenue. There was no Dreamforce because there were no users, there were no customers, there's no revenue, there's no nothing. So when we did our first Dreamforce, it was, I might get this wrong. I want to say it was like at the Westin St. Francis in Union Square in San Francisco. And I remember Mark announcing what we were going to do and said, we're going to have all our customers and users come, and we're going to have all these talks about our product and how people are using it and best practices, whatever. And I thought Mark was nuts. I thought there's no way that we are big enough that there are that many people who are going to come to the Westin St. Francis to make this. It's going to look like a joke. We're all going to be horribly embarrassed. Nobody's going to show up. I remember feeling that way. And that's not what happens. We had a very good showing. I'll actually say, what this is a little tip, maybe that, for your listeners. One thing I learned from Mark is always make sure that the venue's a little bit too small. Because if the venue's a little bit too big, then people feel like it's a boring event. But if it's a little too small and you got people standing outside the rooms waiting to get in, that's pretty good. And that's what happens at the first Dreamforce. It did not disappoint. It was really good. And it was really good for our customers and our users and our ecosystem. But man, it was really good for us as employees too, because we were so jazzed to see that this is real. These people out there, across the country are using this and getting a lot of value, and they're really excited about it. Yeah.
I love this. So there's so much power. There's so much power in events selling out, right? That's how you sustain demand is continue to push is by selling out events and by creating capacity. I love that. All right. So tell us, so we move on. You get to see 10 years of this, then all of a sudden that boom, they take away all your Salesforce, the asset, which you were building, the lobotomy heads. Yep. And so then you move on to Kazoo. So first off, you got to see a company raise funds. You got to see a company go from zero to $1 billion, which is references on references on references. So now, it's a little bit scarier to go out there on your own, but once you've made that decision, you've got to feel a little confident moving out there. So how did your first run go?
Yeah. Well, in some ways great, but in other ways not so great. So the outcome was, not a success. We ended up shutting the company down probably like 3.5 years after starting it.
If it would have been hours, it would have been a much different story.
Yeah, sorry. Definitely not that time frame. That would have been a much quicker fail, and maybe a better use of my time. I'm not really sure. No, I don't regret any of it, to be honest. The only thing I regret is to my investors, my previous investors out there. I'm sorry I lost your money. I am sorry about that. The experience though was pretty amazing for me, and so, what worked? I definitely felt very confident coming out of Salesforce. I had a lot of success there. I felt like I could paint a vision, sell people on the vision, attract the right talent to go pursue it. I felt like I had the grit and the tenacity, because Salesforce kind of beat that into you. Salesforce is particularly in the early days, Salesforce is kind of like the Marines or the Navy SEALs or something. Is like, the last easy day was yesterday. Every day is just particularly when we went through the .com bubble burst, it was hard. We fired a lot of people. You had to perform or you were out. And so I had all those assets, and I thought that was going to really help me. And it did help me. The thing that I didn't have was an idea that we could get to product market fit. We had a really neat idea for Kazoo, and we could talk about it, but maybe it's not worth the effort. But it was the short version of it is we never got to product market fit. We built technology that worked, but we could not get adoption in the marketplace. And so that was seared into my soul that product market fit is the only game in town when you are starting up a company. You have to get there. And I'm not sure who to attribute this to. It might be Steve Blank or Eric Ries or any of these like startup guru thinkers. But a startup is a temporary organization to get to product market fit. And then after you do that, then you change your organization to start scaling something that's working. But in the meantime, you're basically you're like a laboratory, and you're running this series of experiments over and over and over again to get closer and closer and closer to product market fit. And we did that, but we did not do it, I would say, with any expertise at Kazoo. So we did run experiments, but slow and clunky and expensive, and you just run out of runway, and that's what happened for us. And like I said, that's seared into my soul. And now I bring that to everything that I do. When I look at businesses, I think very much about, do you have product market fit? And if you don't, how are you optimizing your experiments to make those iterative cycles very, very tight to get there?
I love that. That's beautiful. And it's, that goes to just the model of constant improvement as well. Once you do have product market fit, you don't stop experimenting, you don't stop testing, and you don't stop learning from your customers and your audience, because they're changing, their habits are changing, their spending is changing, where they're doing it, everything is changing constantly. So I love what you say there, because if you don't have that process down at the beginning, you sure as heck aren't going to have it down the road, because once you get comfortable, it's not like you're going to start testing then. Once you start making money, that's when you get confident, and that's when usually these companies go to die. And so I love what you said there, Drew, that it is about taking action, constant action, looking at your results, making adjustments, and taking more action. And you have to be quick and flexible on it too.
Absolutely.
Nice. All right. So we moved through it. And also too, did you notice how he brought that product up? He brought that business up, but he didn't bring it up when he was solving a problem. Maybe he was solving a problem, but it wasn't as prominent in this first move to Salesforce. His move to Salesforce was because, a product that's going to solve a problem, right? But then his problem was different. His problem was, hey, I'm the problem. I want to live differently. I want to experience life differently. I don't want to work for this company anymore. Let me change that problem. That's probably a little bit different. Those things kind of cross worlds sometimes. And so, all right, after this, you took this expertise and you were an advisor, you were an investor in some companies. I'm sure you gained some good experience there as well.
I did, yeah. And the other thing on my LinkedIn profile, you're getting investor, advisor, traveler, student, I think is what I listed during that period of time. It was a very long-winded way of saying unemployed. So I took about a year and a half off, and I needed to lick my wounds, to be candid, because I had to shut down Kazoo. And I had to notify my investors that there was no pivot left. And there was I wrote the last check into the company to try to keep it afloat. And then I realized if I write another check, it's just wasted money. And so I shut it down. It was very, very tough. It was one of the toughest.
They say you got to know when to hold them, know when to fold them,
know when to walk away.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So we folded, and that was a very tough time in my life. I knew I needed time to just think and contemplate the lessons that I should learn from that experience. And so one of the cool things about the experience of building Kazoo is my co-founder was another guy from San Francisco, but of Serbian origin, and his name's Vladan. So Vladan went to the University of Belgrade, and when he's a bit older than I am. When he was after university, he came to the United States and has lived in the U.S. ever since. But we met in San Francisco, founded the company together, and we decided to build an engineering team in Serbia. Because there's good talent. He had good connections that we could tap into, and so we went to Serbia.
Outsourcing is king right now, man. King. Yeah.
Yeah, and we actually took a different approach. We didn't call it outsource. Like, we very much, this is our captive team that we were working with and managing. So a lot of companies.
Let's say remote work is king. Let's say it that way.
Oh yeah,
way better say.
It's basically all I do anymore. I don't really have an office. So yes, it was a very it turned out to be a great thing, because I got planted I flew to Belgrade with him. I was a little bit scary, 2010, I think, that I went there. If you remember, they had been in a war, and NATO had actually bombed them in 1999. And I wasn't sure what the reception was going to be like for an American over there. Sure. They were incredibly hospitable. It was a very safe and nice place. It was not what I expected. It did look a little beat up, it was economically kind of depressed, and they had been through some tough times. But anyway, the reason I bring this up is I had spent a bunch of time during Kazoo in Serbia. And so when we shut down Serbia, I decided, okay, I need some time to lick my wounds. I'm going to buy a motorcycle in Serbia, and then I'm just going to ride from Serbia across Europe until I figure out what I want to do with my life. And that's basically what I did.
Wow.
Yeah.
How cool. You're like, for one day, you're like, I'm afraid to go to Serbia. The next day, you're like, I'm going to buy a motorcycle in Serbia and then just drive cross country.
Took a little time for me to warm up to that, but yeah, eventually
Yeah.
I got comfortable enough to do exactly that. It was a
Awesome,
lot
man.
of fun.
By the way, that's the biggest I've seen you smile since I've known you, my friend. So that must have been a really good move on your part.
Oh, it was so fun. Yeah, it was such a great experience. And
Awesome.
I have done this in my life where I take, if I need to think about something, I call it helmet time. I hop on my motorcycle, I go on a long ride. It might be weeks or months, and then I do my thinking, and then all the processing's done. I come up with, I know what I want to do.
It's crazy, but and listen, going to pick up a motorcycle in Serbia, it's a luxury, yeah, for sure, 100%. And for me, like I'm a single male. For me, I can just drive cross country, do whatever I want. I can jump ship and go. I live very light. I don't have big bills or wife and kids to hold me down, and that hold me down. Oh, I didn't mean that. A wife and kids to plan around when something strikes me, right? Because when the mood hits you, it doesn't mean it's everybody else is ready to go with you. And the idea of being flexible with your life, the idea, because it's such a blessing to be able to separate yourself and allow these crazy patterns and beliefs to kind of settle down a little bit and allow the clarity to have time. So I just want to tell everybody out there, don't be afraid to take a short break. Have a plan, have a strategy, have an outcome, right? Don't just wander and meander, right? If you don't have the tools or resources to do so. But don't be afraid to take a break. Don't jump right into something else just because you have to, right? Take some time before you leave something to at least know where you want to go. So I love this. You take some time, you drive around, mind's going, doing its thing. So what triggers the next move, Drew?
Well, so that motorcycle ride across Europe, if you want to think of the entire motorcycle ride, probably took about a year and a half. I was not riding for a year and a half, but I ended up riding out to Spain, and I met a girl, and we hit it off and decided to actually move in together. And so I moved to Barcelona for about a year. Barcelona, yeah. And so I decided to move in with her and live in Barcelona, and then just pursue hobbies, honestly, for like a year. I learned to sail. I took a sailing class. I went with friends and learned to surf, picked up surfing and made that a hobby.
Wow.
I enrolled in a Spanish language school, and I did that every day. Cool. Every day, it's embarrassing how bad my Spanish still is after how much I practiced it. But I did all these things that I didn't have time to do before, because Salesforce was like all consuming for me, and so was Kazoo. That was all consuming, and I was in the luxurious position, thanks to Salesforce, that I didn't have to go back to work. I had plenty of funds to survive for a while, and so I decided to go do that and just pursue some things that I otherwise wouldn't have had the time to do.
I love it. Listen, balance comes in beautiful different ways, y'all. Some people are like, no, I need to balance. I need to live. I need to take some days off this week. I need to go out and hang out and celebrate every weekend. Yeah, you can do that, or you can work the weekends and the nights and then take a month or two or a year off later on in life. You can always find your balance, but it's important. It's really important in life. So I love this. So man, all right. All right. You got me distracted with this driving across country, living in Spain.
You can do it. You can do it too, Chris.
Oh man, trust me. I'm close, brother. I'm close. I'm already dating. I'm halfway there right now. All right. So tell me. All right. So after this, what sparks the next idea to move to where we are today, which is this beautiful let's connect the dots for him, Drew.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there was a step in between, which I think is also probably worth mentioning. So I told you I picked up surfing during that break, and one of my friends, my buddy Clarence, had picked up surfing kind of late in life. A lot of surfers are learn when they're groms, as they say. So they're 5 or 6 years old, and they're already surfing out there like pros. We were, in our 40s when we all picked it up, and Clarence kind of spearheaded this. He found this great place in Costa Rica that was a surf camp that catered to middle-aged people who wanted to break into it and had the funds to pay for it and do it in kind of style. And so we did it, and it was not an inexpensive thing, but it was absolutely worth it. It's great. It's a place called Surf Simply in Nosara, and I probably shouldn't mention it because I don't think we need any more people going down there and getting in the waves. But now it's out there. I've said it. So I went down for a week to do a surf camp with Clarence and some other buddies, and at the end of the surf camp, and I was living in Barcelona at the time, with my girlfriend. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the surf camp, I was like, maybe I'll stick around for a few more days and just keep working on my surfing. I kind of got the hang of it. Like I caught a couple of good waves, and the hook was in. I was really excited. And so I was like, okay, I'll stick around for a couple of days. And then the more I thought about it, I'm like, I could stick around for months. There's nothing really. And I contacted my girlfriend in Barcelona, who she had a pretty flexible lifestyle. I said, hey, why don't, she was thinking about taking a yoga teacher training class. And I said, there's a great one down here. Why don't you fly over here and let's just stay in Costa Rica for a few months. You do your yoga teacher training class. I'll learn to surf. I'll just practice every day. And that's exactly what happened. So we stayed in Costa Rica, and eventually all good things must come to an end. I realized, like, okay, I'm not going to turn pro. This is not going to be my career. I'm not going to be a professional surfer. So I decided to, I'd wanted to move back to the States, and specifically I had a bucket list item that I wanted to do, which is move to New York. I'd never lived in New York, wanted to do it. I always loved the city. So long story short, moved to New York, networked with a bunch of VCs there. You kind of said, hey, I'm Drew Sechrist. Here's my resume from Salesforce. I'd love to work with an early stage company running revenue as a chief revenue officer. Yeah. For which I, was pretty well qualified. And so long story short, ended up working with this company called Rocket Trip for a year as their chief revenue officer. Had a lot of great experiences, learned another hard lesson about not having product market fit in a company. And then all of that was more fuel for like how I operate. It was kind of I learned a version of the not having product market fit story with Kazoo. And then I learned another version of it with Rocket Trip. And there were different lessons to take away from it, but they were both really, really powerful for me. So not a success. Rocket Trip was not a success. But it was a great learning experience. And I, again, don't regret it at all, because I think
not
it's
a monetary success, but an educational success.
Oh, an educational, amazing success. Really hard to get something like that, because we did a lot of things right, but we also did a couple of key things wrong. And knowing what those key things are, and I'll just jump. Here's the tip. Here's the lesson.
Bring it.
Do not scale up a sales organization that does not have product market fit. Do not do it, because you will then implode. You do not want to scale up your mess. Stay small, stay tight, iterate on your experiments until you get to hard product market fit. And I'll tell you, it's not always obvious, because we were able to sell the product. We just weren't able to renew the product. And it took a long time for that experiment to play out. It would take a year. Contracts would be a year, or maybe sometimes 2 years. And so we wouldn't be able to see, it's up and running, they're using it. Are they happy? How happy are they? We don't really know until the time comes time to renew. And then they're like, we're not renewing. And that was the big lesson there. It's like, you can think you got product market fit, but be really careful. Make sure you're asking all the right questions. Don't get high on your own supply. You may not, and you can see it if you look in the right places. So that was the lesson from Rocket Trip.
Yeah, I like that. The idea is, really be proactive with what that fit looks like and how you're going to measure it. Right? How are you going to know? Because you can get distracted with sales. I know so many people that are struggling right now because they made a ton of money in the digital transformation of the quarantine and the pandemic. And they got lucky and excited, and they thought that was going to carry on. And then whenever people shifted, they're like, "Oh, well, what do we do now? What do we do now? Nobody knows who we are." Well, you guys got lucky and excited, and I really love that. Know what product fit means, what it looks like, and how to measure it, so that when it does come, you don't get distracted by other things. Beautiful.
Yeah, and then hit the gas. At that point, hit the gas, because you can ride an amazing wave. But before then, anything you scale up, you're going to have to tear right back down. So don't do it.
Yeah, that's wasted work, wasted time, wasted energy. You can't afford that as a young. Yeah.
Wasted money, which is you run out of that and you're dead.
Dead in the water. Absolutely. Okay. I love the way you frame these. So we learned two beautiful lessons, Rocket Fit and Kazoo. And now we're fresh off lessons learned. Maybe a little nervous that my last two didn't rock, and now I got to do something good, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So what happens next, Drew?
Well, one thing I'd say, Chris, is like over the course of the past 13 years or even longer, it's probably been longer than that. I learned this from Mark Benioff. Frankly, he's the first person I saw that did this on a regular basis, and you can kind of feel it coming out of him. He's a regular meditator, and he was a big advocate for it. And you are too?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That's great. Namaste, brother.
My man, yoga every morning and meditation every afternoon, bro.
So I'm a morning meditator. I wake up and the very first thing I do is, I sit for 20 to 30 minutes based on how long it takes me to settle down and get to that calm space. And so, yeah, there's a lot of self-doubt, after having a couple of, having a startup that, my own that failed, and then being at another startup where I was responsible for revenue, and, that thing failed too. And, what makes you decide you're going to get up and, go do it again? And like they say about entrepreneurs, you got to eating broken glass every day, because that's what it's like. And I guess that I just kind of do. And I think meditation helps with that, because I realize that every day is a challenge. There are new problems every day. And frankly, that's what makes life interesting.
Absolutely.
If we didn't have problems, what would we do? We'd be really bored. So we get it's great to have these problems, and then it's great to have the ability to look at problems and say, okay, that is a challenge that I want to step up to that, and let's go do it. So
y'all heard that. He chose. It wasn't a dilemma. He wasn't like, I have to do this. It was, no, I'm choosing. I want to. Want to is different than I have to. Don't forget that point, y'all. That's very, very important.
Yeah. And the temptation was there, Chris, to just say, okay, you know what? I'm going to go back to an enterprise, SaaS company that has product market fit, and then plug in as a sales leader in some capacity, and make a big salary and make a big commission, invest equity. And, that path looked really appealing, because I had a lot of, my peers from Salesforce who'd stayed in Salesforce and they'd risen through the ranks. I mean, they're doing really, really, really well now. And here I had been, out for 10 plus years doing my own, strange adventures that are, not nearly as profitable. And at some point you're like, oh man, am I really squandering, my, this opportunity? Should I get back into that game and then just go run sales like I know I can? And the reality is I just, sat quietly and realized, listened to what I want deeply inside, and what, felt in my stomach. What do I get excited about? And what do I not get excited? What actually do I feel dread with? And going back to the big company filled me with dread. It's just I didn't see myself getting excited waking up in the morning and doing that. And by the way, that was just me. That's just me. There's nothing wrong with that job doing that.
Their own, yeah.
This is just my thing, and so I got clear on what I wanted. And so I said, well, look, it doesn't really matter how much money I die with. I don't care. I'm fine. I'm Chris, like you. I'm a man of pretty simple needs. Really, my girlfriend jokes like I wear shorts and t-shirts and flip-flop every day. Like my wardrobe is very simple. I haven't even owned a car in I think 7 years now. Ever since before I moved to Spain, I got rid of my car, and I've never backfilled it because I don't really need it. And I'm a simple man, so I don't need to acquire a lot of wealth. That's not really what excites me. What excites me is doing something really, 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 really big that changes the world for good for a lot of people. And so I got really excited when I saw, so during this period of time, I took time off as well, after Rocket Trip. And I traveled a bunch, traveled all over, but I was living in New York, and I was really enjoying living in New York. It was a super fun time for me.
And the shorts and flip-flops there.
Yeah, it was not so much a shorts and flip-flops situation in New York. I had some decent clothes when I was there.
Yeah, I bet.
So, but I spent a lot of time thinking about what I wanted to do next. A lot of time thinking, a lot of time contemplating, meditating every morning, and then traveling and thinking about it too, and throwing in a bunch of surf trips. And I think very slowly, sometimes when it's a big thing that I got to contemplate. So I just took a long time thinking about this. And long story short, I came to the conclusion that there was this massive trend that was about to hit us like a tidal wave, all of us. And that trend was like, there has been data piling up for decades, literally decades now, that is semi-structured data that indicates how well people know each other and who knows each other. But it has not been organized because it requires some significant technology to organize it. That's one thing. On the other side, AI, machine learning, was innovating pretty rapidly and getting to the point where I could see that you could point machine learning at that massive set of unstructured data or semi-structured data, and then create a graph of all relationships of people on the planet and how well they know each other. And I thought, wow, that's really good. And that could be amazing for young Drew Sechrist when he was one of the very first salespeople at Salesforce. That could be really transformative. If you could see who really knows who, then you could short circuit the sales process. And so, long story short, we all know that relationships are the best way to sell. You got a good relationship, it's the best way to sell. But it's really too bad that we are missing out on almost all of them. And we figured out a way to actually make almost all of them clearly visible to you. And that's what we have built with Connect the Dots.
Okay. All right. So this lobotomy you had leaving leaving Salesforce and leaving all your data connections, resources, all that behind, left a little scar tissue.
Ooh, yeah, lobotomies leave a mark for sure.
Nice. And so I love this concept. I've already been through my demo. So tell us a little bit about how some people will say, well, hey, don't I have that through LinkedIn? What's different about this?
Well, that's a great question. So, I mean, LinkedIn's amazing. Like, I don't know how any of us would do our jobs without it. Like, it is the thing that we need to see, who is anybody in the world. It's also this really amazing. It's turned into as maybe the best media platform for business. You want to get your targeted message out to people. How do you do it? And we know it. We use it. Like, that's our primary thing that we use. And it's almost like it's kind of strange. It's almost like it's a secret. People don't even think about it like that as much as it really is. It's probably the best business media platform ever in the history of the world.
Yeah.
Now that comes with, there's some pros and cons to that. One of the cons is, so the pro is, you want to get your message out, use LinkedIn. It's awesome. It really is awesome. And I know all these success stories from people who, one guy that I know who is an entrepreneur, a very successful entrepreneur, and he sold his company, and then he started a fund that was going to seed environmentally friendly businesses. He just posted on LinkedIn and said, "Hey, I'm leaving my company. I won't mention his name, but I'm leaving my company, and I'm going to start this fund. And here's the thesis of the fund. We're going to make investments of this size into environmentally friendly companies based on these criteria. If you're interested, let me know." And a week later, he was fully funded. The entire fund. I mean, he had tens of millions of dollars. Yeah, just one LinkedIn post, done. And so LinkedIn is powerful, and it's a great tool. The thing that it doesn't do as well anymore is, because everybody is using it as this media platform, people are connected to everybody. So there are a lot of people, it's like you're connected because you're kind of interested in that person, not because you actually necessarily know that person. And so that is, over time, that's how LinkedIn has evolved. And so it makes it less useful for the specific use case of like, okay, who actually knows who? It's great to see who the people are in the company and understand their positions, but if you really want to get to that person, there's a lot of challenge in doing that. And so that's where, we take it totally.
Yeah, that's one of the big differences that I noticed right away is that, yeah, sure, I accepted your contact. That doesn't mean I've ever even spoke to you, know who you are. I probably regret it actually because you had an automated LinkedIn message that came right afterwards. I didn't take the time to go actually unfriend you later on. But yeah, that first contact looks like every other first contact. Whereas with Connect the Dots, uploaded my information and said, oh, I have this level of relationship with this person. They're not just a contact that tells me the level of relationship that I have with them, which I think it takes it to a whole new level.
Yeah. And it's not just the contacts that you have a relationship with, it's all the contacts that they have a relationship with. So it's, you can see how well you know me, right? And so we've got a more familiar relationship now. We've emailed a little bit. We're doing a podcast together. We both are, meditation brothers. And so, our relationship is deepening. And then you'll be able to see the people that I know and how well I know them. And so, if you want to get a podcast guest, you could say, hey, Drew, I see that you know so-and-so, Sally Smith, who is like a perfect podcast guest for us. And Drew, I can see that you know her well. Would you mind making an introduction? I'll be like, well, I mean, I know Chris and I like Chris, and Chris does a good podcast. And I think, Sally would probably appreciate that. So I can make the decision about making that introduction, but you're not wasting my time. And I'm not wasting Sally's time because everybody in that chain actually knows each other.
Absolutely. I love this. One of the other things that came to my mind was like, oh, okay, great. Another place where I can keep track of friends and people again. Like I've heard my mind, hey, we have this thing, right now, there's this sales enablement. There's, there's what's it called? It's overflow of technology. There's just so many apps and services and things like that. But when I went through the demo, it was very quick and clean. It's just a pop-up, right? Because basically what I see Connect the Dots as a short, almost awareness to the shortcut, right? Like, oh, I didn't know this, I didn't, someone tells you about a shortcut or an insider parking place. Like I'll tell you, when you're in Austin, you're driving north on 35 into downtown, right when you get over the water, you take a right and you get off and you go under the bridge, right down, you get you right to Rainy Street. Even during South by Southwest, doesn't matter. You can get in there, no problem at all. Shortcut, right?
Yeah.
I told you that. That's how you know. With Connect the Dots, you don't got to call around asking for people. You don't got to open a bunch of apps. There's a little plugin pops right open. It says, yes, shortcut, no shortcut. Shows you, yes, you have 3 great contacts. That's it. Or no, but I don't have to waste a ton of time on a new service, a new app, and a bunch of other things. It's all uploaded. It's very much a, hey, yes, there's something here. Hey, no, there's not. I really appreciated that, Drew.
Chris, that's actually a really good way to put it, a shortcut. So thanks for the nice product marketing.
Absolutely. My man.
That was perfect.
So Drew, tell me how this great company, great product, great idea. Tell me how this network intelligence, how you've learned the value over this over your career, and what insights, because obviously you talked about scaling a lot. You also talked about growing the company as an investor, as an advisor, working with board members, all these different things. It's always about connecting people, right? It's always about leveraging these resources. So what are ways that people can use this technology or leverage network intelligence just at a scalable way?
Yeah. I mean, I learned this very early on in my career at Salesforce, and we did it the old-fashioned way, like cave women back then. I'd have to ask somebody. I'd have to ask Mark Benioff, "Do you know so and so?" And if Mark said, "Yeah, I do," and I'd be like, "Great, Mark, I'm going to give you an email that you can copy and paste and send to that person, so that we can get a sales cycle started, so we can create an opportunity." And I got into that habit of doing that with Mark a lot. I did it, thousands of times with Mark, and we made many millions of dollars doing exactly that. And not just with Mark, lots of other people. But it was like the old-fashioned way, where you're really trying to you're groping around in the dark, trying to figure out who knows who. And so, now with
real quick, Drew, that's the same thing. We do that in LinkedIn, but I've reached out to several people like, I'm sorry, I don't even know that person, or I've never really spoke to that person. I have that conversation. So I've done this, try to do it the new fashioned way, but it still wasn't as effective. So go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, that is the conversation that we all kind of dread in sales. It's like, hey, I see you're connected to this person on LinkedIn. Could you introduce me? And they're like, I'm sorry, I don't really know that person. Like, I just wasted my time. I just wasted your time. I wasted a little bit of our relationship capital, because if you bug somebody too many times and they can't help you.
And how good does that person feel saying, "Oh, I'm sorry, I don't know the person. I'm trying to, you need a favor of me and I can't do that favor." That doesn't build any reciprocity either.
It's a very unpleasant experience. It's kind of like, how when you got in Uber for the first time and you left and you didn't have to reach in your wallet and pull out the credit card and you're like, whoa,
Yes.
that was so frictionless. How did that happen? That's
You've
kind of
been doing this for a long time now. What happened?
yeah. So that's kind of the experience with Connect the Dots. You're like, what? That's it? It just worked like that? That's incredible. So yeah, I mean, the use cases primarily right now are for B2B salespeople. That's where it works really well. You're selling to a company, you just go look for that company and then you see the shortcut. Is there a shortcut? Maybe there's no shortcut. Oh, there is a shortcut. We can get straight to the decision maker with a 92% probability because I know 11 people who can get me there. And this is the best person who can make the introduction. Bingo. That's it. It's like you just, it's kind of like, sales. It's kind of like playing a very generous slot machine. It's like it pays out a lot, It's like, well, it might not pay this time. Next one, oh, there it is. It paid. Great. So, and then it short circuits everything. And I remember, I don't know, Chris, I'm not sure if I could tell like a 2-minute anecdote from early days of Salesforce about that.
Oh, man,
I'll make it really short. We hired in, after I'd been there for a little while, we'd hired in a new head of sales to go up market. His name was Jim Steele. And Jim's a legend in the sales industry and in the SaaS industry, and a really great guy. And so, I was involved in the interview process. I interviewed Jim. I loved him. Mark asked me, should we hire him? And I said, 2 thumbs up, definitely hire him. And so Jim was hired, took the job, and they came to me and said, hey, Drew, I really appreciate that you gave me 2 thumbs up. How can I help you? And I said, well, who do you know at companies that are on my territory list? Let's see who we can go to. And he said, I know Henri Richard, who runs sales and operations at AMD. And let's see if we can get a meeting. Long story short, he sent an email. We got a meeting. We got a deal. We closed the deal. It was a $1 million deal in the beginning at Salesforce, which is huge at Salesforce. Maybe it was one of our first $1 million deals. And it was all because they had a good relationship. They knew each other. And would I have gotten that deal without that relationship? Like, I would say 0 chance that deal would not have happened. We just would have never made it through all the antibodies in the organization to get up to Henri, to be able to make the pitch. Like, that deal happened because those two had a great relationship. And but the problem is we were still groping around in the dark, trying to look at a list and say, hey, do you know anybody here? We've solved that problem. Now we're not groping around in the dark anymore. Now you can go right down the list and say, here's our best in, here's our best in, here's our best in, here's our best in, here's our best in. And you can just win over and over again.
I love this. And we talk to people, these young SDRs and sales reps right now, every opportunity, every call you're on, you're building a relationship right now, a relationship that you'll use through the rest of your life. And I imagine a lot of these people that you started, your first clients, people that you supported in Salesforce, are people that you still maintain relationships with today, Drew.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Some of my very best friends are my coworkers and from Salesforce, and my customers, that we've got relationships that go on for decades now.
And I love it. And here's the other thing too, y'all. We had a great conversation with our boys at Retail Relevancy, Ted Rubin and John Anders, and they were talking about how marketing nowadays for brands, when your whole database and everything is out there on social media, your only way to get to them is through social media. Eventually they can close those doors for you. If your only way to keep in touch with your contacts is through LinkedIn or whatever, you're not controlling your database and your biggest asset as a business development or sales development representative. This is your relationships are everything. And when you're looking to hire, when you're looking to promote, when you're looking to look for a new job, look for relationships. This always works out better. Drew, you said, even if you did get that client, maybe you don't keep the client, right? Because with a referral, that person's already above the line of authority. If you come in below and you get somebody to do some work with you, and now they're maybe regretting it, it's a whole different experience when you've got that trust and rapport already built in. It's just it's like why not turn the car on? Turn it on instead of trying to push it down the road. Really, sales are much easier when you're using all the resources available to you. And this is a great tool.
Absolutely.
Well, hey, Drew, man, I really appreciate this conversation. And I spent a little time more wanting to hear your story, just because, it's a fascinating story. One, I think people often hope that they get this big win, they get to work for the big company. And I also wanted to hear, sometimes that's not all that, yeah, it was a great experience. And sometimes that's not what you're hoping for in life. That's not the end of the road, end of the journey. And sometimes also that success doesn't always come in getting the payout, right? You had two great successes, which allowed you to learn what you learned today, which allowed you to launch the next company and allow you to have a big old smile on your face today. And I think if we can go through life and we can look at our results in a more curious way with learning and yeah, it can be heavy sometimes. I'm sure there's some moments in there where you didn't have the smile on your face, right? But you got through it. And so, man, thank you for sharing your journey with us. And y'all check out Connect the Dots. You're going to be able to see Drew's contact information linked in here in the chat. But definitely check out Connect the Dots. We'll have a link there for them as well, Drew. Is that still waiting list or?
Yeah, there's a wait list. We'll let you in as soon as we can. As we are scaling it up and making room for people, and you can get on the wait list at ctd.ai, as in connect the dots, ctd.ai.
Boom. All right, y'all, there it is. Thank you, y'all, for being here. Thanks for being on another Leads to Growth podcast. Drew, thanks for joining us, man. We'll have to hit those. You have to show me how to do some surfing sometime, man. I want to get that Costa Rica life, man.
Costa Rica, I think there's a direct flight from for you in Austin down to Liberia. Meet me down there.
My man, we'll have to work on that. All right, y'all. Y'all know what to do. Put the stars in the comments and the rating here. Thank you so much for being here. Download, comment, like, all those fun things, and we'll see you on the next one. Cheers, y'all. That's Leads to Growth and the National Association of Sales Professionals.